Hello, everyone. So today we'll be having a career panel called Mentorship and Beyond, and it's from a software development engineer at Expedia Group.
Hi, my name is Holly. I've been at Expedia for over 10 years. I ended up working through my way around, and I'm a software development engineer. I work on the internal tools within Expedia. So a lot of the things that I work on are not the cool things that you see on the website when you go to expedia.com. However, we have a lot of technologies, and many of those things are things that help build the website that we currently have today. It takes a lot of engineers to kind of get through any type of corporate site and things like that. So it's very important to be able to have folks from all different types of backgrounds. And yeah, that's a quick little bit about me and what I do.
Thank you. And so, Holly, our first question for you is, how did you get into the field of tech?
Yep. So in terms of technology, I've always been attracted to it. As a kid, my uncles and even my dad got me into building computers, and that was probably before I was 10 years old. And I thought that was the most cool thing ever. And I took some computer science courses. So back when I was in school, it was an elective. So I think right now it's probably more common for
Mm-hmm.
you to take computer science courses. But there was an offering as like a trial type of thing, and I've always wanted to get into it. And so I pursued some courses in high school, and I pursued a degree in college, but the majority of the folks in the class, which may be very different now, but they were all male. I think in one of my courses, I was one out of 3 or 4 women, and it was never taught by a person who looked something like me. It was almost always taught by someone who was a man, either in like their
Mm-hmm.
mid 30s or so. And half the time, some of them are foreign speakers, so I couldn't really quite understand what they were trying to teach. Um, but when I first started out at Expedia, I did not actually have a software development job. I graduated at a really tough time. Some of you guys may be anticipating right now. I graduated in 2008, and so it was really hard for anyone, whether you have a
Oh.
software engineer degree or not, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first started working, I started figuring out that I really love solving problems and solving problems with technology at that. I started building out little macros and things that made my job, which was data entry at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I made it so much easier. I ended up closing out and completing more work 10 times or more
Mm-hmm.
than my peers who were just doing exactly what they were told. And it opened up opportunities for me to kind of continue my career in software development. So one of the things to know is that my journey through technology is not going to be very common from those that you see. I did not I did not graduate with a computer science degree. I actually graduated with management science. I forget what it was called, but it was like managerial economics type of degree.
Mm-hmm.
And it eventually you can always apply technology in how you end up working. You can always take courses later on, and it as long as it's the newest technology, it's always going to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And for me, I also wanted to say how I got into technology. So, in my sophomore year of high school, I actually didn't really have a plan on what I wanted to do. I wasn't even sure what courses I wanted to take for my junior year. So, but in the summer of my sophomore year, I actually attended this 1 week camp that inspired me to basically take the AP Computer Science class in the fall, and also actually to create STEM League. through AP Computer Science, I thought that I need to get a little more help because it was actually a pretty challenging class for me. So I was really proactive in searching for some external camps and programs to help me better learn coding. And Girls Who Code was actually one of them, and that's actually how I met Holly. So yeah. Our second question for Holly is, what do you do as a software developer at Expedia?
This is a really broad question,
Mhm,
but ultimately, you solve problems with technology. So, we get different types of problems to solve. The problems I typically get are the ones that are going to help make things easier for people who are trying to update information on the Expedia site, and we try to solve them through making things a lot easier to be able to get certain things done. So automation. Sometimes we look and see how things were done before, and we may find a faster way of getting that accomplished. And so it just really depends on what your what space that you're in. We have folks that are on Expedia. Their goal is to make sure that you get the best prices shown on the site. And so that's it. Every single person has a different type of thing that
mhm,
gets presented in front of them. And so regardless of the problem that gets presented, your job as a developer is to solve it.
mhm. To give a little contextual background, yeah, me and Holly met during the Girls Who Code program, and she was actually my mentor for the time. And so, our next question for Holly is, why did you decide to become a mentor for the Girls Who Code program?
Yeah. Chris and I, we met about four years ago
Yeah,
or so. It's been a
yeah,
long time.
yeah.
Um, and Expedia wanted to try to bridge the gap between women in technology because it's still a rare thing to find. And so I wanted to kind of be participate in Girls Who Code primarily because of the experience that I kind of observed when I was in college.
Mhm,
Girls who go through education and they may not feel like they are welcome in the world of technology. And
mhm,
so that's how it started. Like for me, I did not feel very welcome in college courses or in the major that I was in. It's definitely different now, at least from what I hear. But when you go into the workplace, you realize there are certain things that are not quite welcoming. But how do you change that? And how do you encourage more girls or female or diverse people, that right now we're seeing a lot of Black Lives Matter type
mhm,
of you know I guess that type of motivation. And a lot of it is because the current system does not have it is not inclusive enough to welcome all types of people.
mhm,
And so I wanted to be able to provide a different perspective of what it's like after you get to where you are. I had a very different approach than your most common software developer who, probably some guy who came from a generally wealthy family. They were encouraged from when they were 3 to have technology in their hands. That's not very common um, for all types of people.
mhm.
I mean, I remember meeting certain girls, and they were saying, "Oh, I've never seen a computer before," and I thought it was shocking because there's some folks there's some parents that think, well, why would I want to buy a computer for my daughter?
Mhm,
I would buy it for my son, but not for my daughter. And that's kind of how technology starts becoming a systematic problem.
mhm.
And so,
That's true.
uh, I just want to say, hey, look, even if you just started using a keyboard for the first time about a year ago, you can solve problems because ultimately that is what a software developer does. It's
Mhm,
not about how many years of courses that you've taken. Technology changes so fast. It's really hard
mhm.
to be able to keep up with all types of languages to solve all types of problems, but you're going to
Yeah.
find your journey.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to be that welcoming soundboard to kind of foster that culture.
Mhm. Definitely makes sense. Yeah. And also adding on to that, like when I was taking like my first experience encounter with computer science was during my AP computer science class. And yeah, like basically how Holly said, I believe I was like only like one of the three in like a room full of 30 students. I was one of the only three like girls in the class. So, and a lot of the people there, I feel like were definitely somehow experienced with using computers and obviously coding. So it was definitely really intimidating for me, which was really why I decided to reach out to, the external camps that I put myself in. But those camps, especially like Girls Who Code, they were super inclusive and like welcoming, and they really took on a slower pace than the AP course, obviously. So it was really good for me to learn my fundamentals and like review them there as well. Next, I want to talk about questions for mentors, right? Don't be afraid to ask your mentors questions. When me and Holly were having our mentoring sessions, I believe it was like every Tuesday each week. At first, I was definitely really afraid to ask the questions. I was like, oh, is it okay to ask this or that? But just make sure to keep your questions more in the career advice or, career interests or any like kind of college type of questions. I know it's really difficult to make that initiative to ask the first question, but just don't be afraid to do that because your mentors wouldn't be there if they weren't there to like help you answer your questions. And also like make sure to strike up that casual conversation first if you don't feel like you want to start off with a specific question. Maybe you can ask your mentor about their specific tech journey, and then also just make sure to be polite and really build that authentic connection. Like make sure you're listening in on your mentor's advice. Don't just ask a question for them to say something and not listen, right? Really take those suggestions and recommendations in. So the next slide, I just have a couple of questions that are example questions you can ask your mentors. I know you guys meet up with your mentors twice a week. Even if you're not asking questions about like the developer program curriculum, you can always ask these questions. So question one is like kind of how do you spend most of your time, right? You can start this off as a genuine conversation. And they are also college students and they've been through your shoes like in terms of like high school and like doing college. So yeah, feel free to ask that. And then maybe the next question is what would you do if you were me, because I know you guys are all 6th to 10th graders, so mentors have been in your shoes and they're always here to help you. So for example, if you're not doing so well in your math class, maybe you can ask them what kind of recommendations they would have. Maybe they say, I was having that same situation. I went on Coursera or some kind of online tool that helped them, or maybe did some kind of like a practice kind of thing each week, right? And then question three, was there a time where you messed up and you felt like you failed? How did you bounce back? So everyone has experienced failure, and failure is definitely key to like success and learning. So everyone experiences this. So it's beneficial to ask your mentors on how they encountered and tackled these problems when they had to. And then another question is, what are you most proud of in your tech journey? So definitely a lot of people, a lot of mentors like to share about their success stories and kind of how everything came together for them so that they can provide you with a better contextual kind of understanding about how your journey can possibly work. So make sure to give your mentors the time to talk about that, the time to shine, and you can also learn more about them during these kind of questions. And then question five, why did you decide to choose a career path in tech? So it's always great to ask your mentors about this. About their specific motivations for pursuing tech, and it can be helpful advice for you when you're choosing a career path as well. So, and then also if you don't have questions at the moment, you can also say ask them, hey, I don't have any specific questions. Can I follow up with you? Because that's totally fine. Like, that's also helping to build that follow up for the next time you ask the question. So don't, yeah, so you don't have to think questions off the top of your head. And if anything comes up later, just ask them the next time you see them. And then the last question is maybe what classes did you take in high school or college that helped you in your, your specific summer plans, for example, an internship or a research position, right? So mentors have experienced all of these before. So asking them about their experiences will definitely help you to get an insight on like what you can do. So definitely ask about their advice on anything that you want to try, in terms of the stuff that they've done. And then lastly, just make sure to follow up with your mentors, right? Like your mentors are answering your questions in hopes of benefiting you. Make sure to like follow up with them and let them know like, hey, your advice benefited me, because they'd always love to hear about that kind of stuff. And just make sure to always thank them for their time as well.
And
Okay,
I
so
wanted
oh, yeah.
to echo a little bit about that because,
Mm-hmm.
I've mentored Kristen and we talk periodically through email and we've caught up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why I signed up to be a mentor is because I wanted to be able to see my mentee success. I want to know all the cool things that they're building. I want to know how their journey is shaping up. And if there's any trouble that they're kind of running into, what does the trouble look like now? Is there something that my journey can help them continue on with theirs? And so it's from a mentor's perspective, they just want to see that um, it applies, or
Mm-hmm.
there might be a new perspective that they've accomplished, and or that they can kind of help you with. So they would not have signed up to be a mentor if they did not want. That's one thing for everyone to kind of know.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for the add-on. And I believe this one's our last question. So, Holly, what are some advice you have for the students interested in pursuing software development in the future workforce, like kind of how you are doing?
Right. The biggest thing is technology changes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working at Expedia for over 10 years now. And when I first started looking at jobs, I could see every type of job in the job board. But most of the titles at the time when I was searching for my first job is they were all IT engineers.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what they were all titled. They were doing everything under the sun that had to do with technology. So they had to write code, they had to write their tests, they had to test their code, they had to build out their own deployment, like everything that they've done. It's all under one title. So if you
Mm-hmm.
had a hardware problem, you went to an IT engineer. If you have a software problem, you went to an IT engineer. And that IT engineer didn't necessarily have the active skill set of everything in the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And also, 10 years later, we have so many more specialized technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, at the time, I think Java and C, was it C++? I think those were the two popular coding languages of IT. And now there are so many languages. I mean, the whatever is popular now, yeah, they existed about 10 years ago, but it would not have been a team to be able to do something like building things on Ruby on Rails.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's probably even outdated now. Like who still uses just Ruby, right? You're using something else on top of it that leverages the technology underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think right now the most popular language is Python.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you're starting to actually find your first full-time role as a software developer, it's probably not going to be the most popular. We don't know.
Yeah.
And so the titles change, the jobs change, and things like if you're interested in data science, that was not even a thing that people
Mm-hmm.
knew about when I was working, or until probably around 6 or 7 years ago is when the first data scientists kind of showed up at Expedia.
Mhm.
And then, you had one person, then it became three people, then it became a team, and then now you have, um, you know, 50, 60, almost hundreds of data scientists that are
Mhm.
working within a company.
Mhm.
So always evolves in that type of way, and you cannot prep for that. So the reason why I say you can't prep for it is because you can't study data science if there's no job out there for that, right?
Yeah.
There's no courses, so if there's no job, and so what you're gonna end up seeing is just embrace what you like to learn.
Mhm.
Um, so if you somehow realize, oh, I really like solving UI problems, I just out of nowhere, um, then learn things about web, learn things about things that touch the web portion of that technology, and eventually you'll start discovering new things about it, and maybe you might realize, oh, is that all it is? Maybe I want to switch to something else.
Mhm.
And there's just always something new to learn, and just because it's new doesn't mean that you're starting over, because you can build on top of what you already know. That's how the best things are developed. It's just out of experience from previous solutions.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. And lastly, I just want to say mentorship is key. Like your mentor is giving you the advice right now, and you having a mentor throughout your tech journey is super beneficial. I mean, I can definitely say for my part too, and she's given me super awesome advice, and also just maintaining that relationship and continuing to connect once in a while, right? Like now it's 2020. This picture was back in 2016. So continuing that connection once in a while and just like catching up with each other and just sharing our own success or updates can really help to keep that bond going, even at this difficult time.
Yes, and I also
Yeah.
want you guys to know, like, even for myself, I have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
That I you can always find a new mentor if somehow your what you want to learn is different than the mentor you have. You don't have to stick with just one, but do try to follow up with ones that you really connect with,
Mm-hmm.
and that is interested and invested in helping you grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so just a summary of the key points that we talked about, definitely first get to know your mentor, right? They're not just there to help you answer your specific questions during like your mentoring session. Like, of course, they'll always answer those questions, but if there's extra time, like really make that genuine connection and introduce yourself, and just start up a conversation. And you could even schedule like outside times if your mentor is free to talk to you about other things other than the developer program, and then ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your mentors questions and any kind of career related school opportunities that you'd like to know about, and then maintain these relationships. So even after this 8-week developer program, you can, if your mentor is comfortable and if they want to and you want to, you can always maintain that relationship and sync up with them once in a while. It doesn't have to be twice a week like how it is in the program, but you can maintain a good relationship and just connect with your mentor. And then lastly, as Holly said, tech is always evolving. Right now you guys are learning Python for the data programming track, and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the web dev. But maybe in 10 years when you actually start working in the workforce, all of this would be different. Maybe Python won't be the most popular programming language anymore, but just make sure that to focus on what you like to do, like your learning and your interests. Of course, like embrace the technology, but always know that tech is evolving, and maybe there's other things you got to pick up once in a while. But just work hard, and eventually you'll get where you want to be. So yeah. And just lastly, we just want to extend a big thank you to Holly for her time this morning to talk with us and also prepare this awesome panel. It's been really great having you on our panel today, Holly.
Oh, thank you for the time.